All right, let's rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Good evening, everybody. Roll call, please, Tom, when you're ready there.
Director Asman.
Here.
Director Moeller.
Here.
Director Sartorius.
Here.
Director Suda.
Here.
Vice President Staton.
Here.
Vice President President Cuneo.
Here. All right, we have a quorum. Welcome, everybody, to the business meeting. Recognition, Stephen Portis, please. I am truly happy to see this.
And call Stephen up to the front. Good evening, Board. President Cuneo, Board of Directors, Dr. Macklin. I'm Jennifer Henry, the Chief Communications Officer. And I'm here tonight to celebrate Stephen Portis, a Learning Center VSP Vocational Skills Program intern, whose quick thinking and courage helped save the life of one of our custodians, Joseph Dickerson. Noticing something was wrong, Stephen alerted one of his teachers, ensuring that Dickerson received the emergency care that he needed. His calm demeanor and determination not only helped Mr. Dickerson, but also reassured his peers during a very tense time. His actions demonstrated remarkable growth and the true power of using his voice when it mattered most. We're incredibly proud of Stephen and grateful for his heroic efforts. I'd like to invite his teachers who are here with us tonight, Ms. Rachel Blake and Ms. Joy Voss, to come up and take a photo with us. Let's celebrate Stephen. And Stephen, we would like to give you the certificate as recognition for your efforts, and then we'll have you come up here for a photo.
You did good.
Yeah.
You're here.
Real good. Can we get his family up here too? You all must be really proud of him.
Incredible.
I'll tell you what, that's the kind of stuff that makes tonight worthwhile.
Yeah.
Public comments. We have one public comment. Whoops, do we have two
No.
public comments?
So that was.
That was.
One public comment. Tim, it is yours.
Thank you, President Cuneo. I'm Tim Eby, the Executive Director of the Special Education Foundation. It's nice to say Vice President Staton. That sounds good coming out of your mouth. Congratulations on that, Dr. Macklin and all of the trustees. I'm just here to say thank you. It is a time of giving, and I just want to thank all of you as trustees to this institution for your leadership, to the administration at SSD for all that they do, and certainly the staff and all of the educators involved with the special school district. We are here, SEF exists to support the students, the families, the educators, and everyone involved in the SSD community. And we don't say thank you enough for what the community brings to us. We had Giving Tuesday last week and raised close to $8,000 to support several programs, including our Classroom Innovation Grant Program and our Winter Coat Drive that we do for our Critical Needs Program. And I think it's important to also say where those dollars come from. One of the things I think that the generosity of people across this region is amazing. We get support from foundations, from corporations, but we also, about a little less than 5% of our total revenue comes from the SSD community. And that are, teachers that, make a decent wage, but not great money, and educators, custodians, bus drivers, all folks, and the administration, and those of you on the Board of Education chip in to help. So it goes without saying that we're extremely grateful. And during this time of year, I think it's worth saying thank you. So thank you for what you do and for all of you and for your great support of the Special Education Foundation.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And also, thank you. You never miss a meeting. That's amazing. Thank you. Would someone like to make a motion for the approval of the consensual items?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Next, we have the superintendent's report.
Great. Tonight, we will have 3 presentations. We'll hear from Chief Technology Officer Doug Alston, who was here, and then provide an update regarding really technology and what our next steps are in the next 5 years for those pieces. We also have Chief of Technical Education Kevin Andert here, along with Kenny Mulder, who I see here, who will be giving an update on our 5-year plan with our bus garage. And then lastly, tonight, we will hear from Bill Gamble. I understand he is, no, Bill Gamble. Okay, so that means we just, he's not here yet. He's on his way. Okay, great. All right, so Bill Gamble's on his way, and so if he makes it, we will make that adjustment. If not, we'll have to make that to go from there. Okay, let's start off with technology tonight. Doug Alston.
Speaking of technology, I'm having a hard time logging into Board Docs. Anybody? I updated my password, but it's not a.
Have you ever?
No, I changed it, and I typed the right password. It's just not logging in.
He's not able to get in.
It's just hanging.
To Google.
I'm in on the public side.
It just it just hangs, and it's been doing this for. Since the start. I tried a couple of different times. So.
It's all public until later.
Sorry.
This is not part of the technology presentation.
No.
That's not, yeah, this is not part of
This
the
is not part of the
presentation.
technology
Sorry.
presentation. No.
Demonstration.
Good evening,
Our skill
President
set.
Dr. Cuneo, Vice President Staten, Directors of the Board of Education, Superintendent Dr. Macklin. I'm Doug Alston again, Chief Technology Officer, and I'd like to take you through my 5-year plan. There's a mission statement. We haven't adjusted our mission statement yet, but we'll be doing that. So I want to start out by talking about briefly the criteria I use to try to plan our priorities as a technology department over the 5 years that encompass our plan. So I look out at technology trends that are coming and emerging on the marketplace now, and ones that are expected to come to market or become major disruptors over the next 5 years. So the current technology trends, if we look at them within 5 years, again, cybersecurity is a big component. That's going to be a component. It's been a component for a long time. We also have the idea of cloud native computing and cloud native services. So this is a shift where more and more services, and we'll talk about this a little bit later in future slides, that more applications are going to be cloud-based, and a lot of those applications are going to be cloud only going forward. So we'll have fewer and fewer applications that will be things that you install on your local device. Most of them will be services that are available in the cloud. And then finally, artificial intelligence. That's going to be a theme. We're going to talk about that a lot on these slides. One of the big things we're hearing currently is generative AI. So you hear a lot of stuff about ChatGPT and other types of generative AI. That's what's hitting right now. And so every service is going to be offering some form of generative AI in the next year or so. The big one on the horizon that we'll talk a little bit later is autonomous AI agents. And these are agents that are going to be able to perform work tasks without human interaction at all. So we'll talk about that a little bit later. So from that, I try to gather priorities, and I have 4 key priorities over these 5 years that we're going to work on. The first one, and that's true of all the departments in special school district, fiscal stewardship is always the top of our priorities, trying to do things that save us money in any possible way or work in most efficient ways. So in technology, it's not just within my budget or trying to get costs down, but it's also applying technology in a way where we can save costs across the organization. Cybersecurity and data security, a big component as well. We'll talk about that a little bit later, but that's a key priority. Equitable access to adequate technology. And what I mean by that is making sure that students, staff, all of the people that we serve have the technology that they need to do their jobs. Students have the technology they need to learn. And very important for this district, because we work with so many different partners, sharing data, not just the data that we have, but data that exists in other partner systems that we can use to do a better job with educating our students. So over the next 5 years, one of the things that I'm going to be doing, and we'll see this a little bit later on, is aligning my technology upgrades in the buildings that we service with a 10-year facilities plan. So making sure that we have the ability to meet the needs as we make changes or updates to our buildings, and then also trying to find areas where we can save costs by not, going back in and running cabling and things like that when we're already doing electrical or power or something else. And any of those things where we can save money by not stepping over each other is what we're going to go for. Technology access, one of the key ways that I've been working with ensuring everyone has the technology they need is by implementing centralized purchasing of technology, especially in the terms of devices that we put in the hands of staff and students. So what I have here is projections of our spend for replacing and refreshing the devices for both staff and students. This reflects the leasing payments that we'll be making because we moved to a computer leasing model. And one of the things that allows us to do is spread the costs for computer replacement over multiple fiscal years instead of having a particular fiscal year have a very high cost because there's a large number of devices being replaced. So to kind of make that easier to budget for and plan for. Now, these projections, as they go further and further out, fiscal year 28 and 29, are going to be more estimates than real costs. I'm factoring in inflation and increases in potential increases in interest and other components that we might have to purchase on those. When we get closer to those years, those will get a little bit more accurate. I'm not quite sure. I wanted to make sure and add in for inflation on those costs. Network upgrades, like I mentioned, will be upgrading our buildings, adding classrooms, remodeling classrooms. I want to make sure that our network supports all the students and all the spaces that we create for those and coordinate that with our facilities department to make sure that those are all in place. And one of the key components that we're working on in this 5-year plan over the next couple of years is replacing the PA systems and bell systems in our buildings. A lot of our buildings have systems that have been in for quite some time. Some of those have kind of been piecemealed together over the years. So we're going through a mechanism of making sure all spaces in the building have adequate PA system access so that when announcements are made and information is spread, everybody hears that. And we don't have any spots where there is no access to that. And then also just updating the system to make sure that they're functional when they are needed. Again, by moving to the lease, this FY25 budget request that we put in, we're able to reduce that by about 1.9 million, as opposed to what it would have cost if we would have paid for all the devices that were replaced. Keep in mind that this year was the year that a lot of the devices that we purchased during the COVID with a lot of grant funding had to be replaced, and we no longer have those grant funding. So. Cybersecurity and data privacy, again, the high priority for us is one of our key things that we're always looking for. So one of the big things is, phishing emails that try to compromise accounts or gain access to systems. We try to make sure that our staff are aware of those dangers and are prepared to not fall for those things. So we actually do a phishing awareness campaign where we actually send out phishing messages ourselves and see who actually interacts with those. And for everyone that interacts with those, we say, well, here's some training on phishing that you should be aware of. And so that's been very successful. If you look at the left-hand lower chart there, that's on the slide. The lower line is the actual rate of staff that fall for the phishing, and then the blue line at the top is what we expected. So we're actually trending down, and people are learning how to identify malicious emails more effectively. Multi-factor authentication is another big key here. There are about 17.3 million passwords that have been compromised that are sitting in databases where people just go and mine that and find out exactly what password's ever been used by a particular email address on any site. So having the password by itself is not adequate protection to keep unwanted people out of the data that we store. So we implemented multi-factor authentication. The lower right-hand chart there shows the number of attempts that we thwarted where the password was correct, but the multi-factor authentication failed, so that prevented unauthorized access to resources. And the top chart is another one of our monitoring things. So security monitoring is a big thing, trying to make sure that we're monitoring the controls, trying to find if there are any vulnerabilities or any possible risks that we need to mediate. So this shows over the past year the number of incidents that we've identified. These are threats. We've dealt with them. We've closed them out, and which ones were considered high risk, which ones were medium, and which ones were low risk over the past year. Again, back to the artificial intelligence thread. AI is a big cybersecurity concern. I mentioned earlier that those autonomous AI agents that can perform tasks without human intervention, one of those tasks is breaking into other people's systems. So we have an environment now where you don't have to have any type of technical skill. You can target an organization that you want to try to break into for whatever reason, and there are AI bots that are willing to do that for you and available for a fee to go attack anybody you need. So that's a big thing. And another thing that's emerging that's going to become more and more important over the next 5 years is the ability to detect and mitigate disinformation and disinformation campaigns that are aimed at causing damage to the reputation of an organization. Gartner report that they did where they surveyed the CIOs and CTOs of top Fortune 500 companies, 61% rated disinformation as a significant risk for their organizations. Cloud services, I mentioned that cloud native applications was one of the big trends in technology. We have to be prepared for that. One of the things that we were seeing happening is more and more applications are moving to cloud only or cloud first. And that includes software as a service. That's typically how we think of these applications. A web-based program, you go to the internet, you log on to it, and it provides a service for you. But there is also infrastructure as a service. These are components that run in the cloud, that run the pieces that connect you to the internet. A big part of that right now is wireless infrastructure. Is actually a lot of that is controlled and managed through services that are actually in the cloud rather than on the local network. One of the big drivers for this is, again, AI. AI is a threat to everything again. So having the ability to add AI services to those features, for example, in the wireless network infrastructure that is cloud controlled, there can be AI components that automatically optimize connectivity and balance workloads between different wireless access points based on the number of computers connecting to it. Those services are available and only offered in the cloud version of those management software. So those are things that, we have to plan for and work towards. Now, one of the big things that you have to work around when we're looking at the cloud services adoption plan is moving funding, which would typically be planned around a capital investment of a major upgrade of hardware and technology, and moving that to a subscription model, which is more of an operational expense, and planning for how that works. And so, again, You have subscription, you kind of plan for that year over year, and instead of having this 1 year where you have this era where you have to replace a lot of components, software, licenses, that just becomes an annual fee that gets paid over time. And sometimes this is done via a consumption model, which means you're actually charged for what you use. And so that can be a little bit more difficult to plan for. So you can't just say it's always going to be this amount, because as these services become more widely available, as more and more people become used to using these services, they consume more of it, and therefore the price goes up. So it's one thing to plan for, instead of going, well, we bought this 4 years ago and we're going to use this for 2 more years and then replace it. It's a little bit different when you are cloud native. Data sharing. So one of the key things that I'm looking to do is multi-cloud data integrations. Again, everything going cloud native, more and more data is going to be housed outside of resources that we control within our data center. So working through all of the technical difficulties of making sure we have access to data when we need it. We are not locked into any particular solution, and we can do what we need to do without being limited by that solution's capabilities. One of the things that I'm working on and have been working on for quite some time is this concept of a special education operational data repository. That's all of the data elements that are necessary to make data-driven decisions for special education services being available to us, so we can analyze and get that information, not only within the staff of SSD, but also provide that information to our partner district, general education teachers and administrators, so that they can also make decisions about programming. One of the ways we're trying to accomplish that is through this EdFi data initiative. EdFi is a data standard. It's very popular in several states, including Texas. The EdFi Foundation is headquartered in Texas. So we've been working with lots of different vendors and trying to get our data ready to go into an EdFi repository, so that we can share data through that data model. And that's going to allow us to do reporting out of that data, visualization of that data, and integrations on that data. Sharing this data is still a challenge for special school district. We have 22 partner districts with 22 different systems and 22 different ways of handling this data and data capability. So I'm working with getting them all connected, finding ways that we can share data quickly and easily. One of the things that I've done to do that is partnering with MORENET, the Missouri Research and Education Network, and they have a grant from the EdFi Foundation that they're working with to try to build this EdFi data repository that we can use to share data. And it's a partnership that we've worked with. The EdFi Foundation is very interested in working with us to expand their capabilities for special education data within their data model, which currently is very, very limited. So, this final slide is our, we go through an annual MSIP data program monitoring review every year. And so these are the key indicators from that review that we go through. We broke this down into 3 key KPIs for a monitoring report. The first one is providing timely tech support for all of our staff. So we have an SLA of how many hours it takes for an incident that gets reported or a service request to get reported before we've accomplished that task and have that service provided to our both students and staff members. So over the past year, we're about 92% of all of service and incident requests that have come in have been accomplished within the time frame that we set aside for ourselves, and that's up slightly from last year of 90%. Our goal was 90%. Customer satisfaction, we do a customer satisfaction survey after we close every ticket, and we track most of our service requests and incidents that come through in a ticket. And so once that's completed and finished, whoever initiated that gets a survey. They fill out that survey whether or not they're satisfied. And we look at those survey results and any comments that come back, and we make adjustments to our processes for that. So we're at 99%. That's equal to what it's been for the past several years. Again, our goal was 90% satisfaction. We're looking for ratings of 4 or 5 out of a 5-point scale, and we're at about 4.95 on a 5-point scale, average across that. Now, one of the things I want to point out with this is we moved from a model where we're not necessarily sending surveys for every type of closure. If a ticket was duplicated, for example, or if the customer canceled their request, we didn't send a survey for that. So we thought we might be missing some feedback for that. So we changed and said, okay, it doesn't matter how we close the ticket or why we close the ticket, everyone's going to get a survey for it. What we found was people didn't respond to those surveys anymore. So we never got any more surveys. So our percentage of responses went down to about 18% from about 32% by including those additional surveys. Weren't surveying them. I think they're surveyed out, especially if they already responded to one survey for the same ticket in the case of a duplicate. So we thought we might capture some more, and we didn't. It's the exact same number of tickets that came back. And then access to adequate technology. The way that I was measuring that for the monitoring report is looking at all of the devices that we had purchased over the last 4 years and making sure we replace them within a 4-year window. We're at 100%. We replaced about 2,415 devices last year. And that's about the same as we've been the year before that. And of course, the first year when we first started that initiative, we didn't have great counts on everything. So I could verify, we did about 79% of those. And then after that, we've had, pretty good accurate numbers for how many that we purchased and how many we needed to replace. So before I move on to questions that you might ask me, I have one question for you. I would like to change some of our metrics and KPIs. I don't find a lot of value in KPIs that are always above goal and don't really have much room to go anywhere. I don't think that informs me as a leader of changes that I need to make. So what measures would you like to see in a monitoring report year by year for technology services is the question I have. You don't have to answer that right now. It's just that's something to think about. So I would like to provide you with information that you find informative. And that leaves us to questions. Anyone have any questions?
You did a really good job of explaining lots of things, but I have a question about when you talk about technology in the district. I think it's important to realize we have student technology,
Yep.
teacher technology, and central office or administrative technology, and you're dealing with all those at once. But I guess one of my concerns is if I'm looking at student technology, the augmentative devices, the Zoom text or whatever we're using now for enlarging material for visually impaired students or students with visual impairments. How diverse is all that? What's the major part of that? I mean, I also look at the finance department downstairs, what types of programs. So you're involved in all those aspects.
Yeah, so generally the way that I handle most of the devices I provide the standard devices. So what will be considered standard classroom devices, Chromebook for the students, those kind of things. And then if there are specialized technologies that are part of certain programs, for example, our career and technical education program, that usually stays within the budget of that program because it's part of that program. We need to see the full cost of that, including the technology that's part of it. In the case of our assistive technology, I work closely with our assistive technology department. And we kind of plan for what devices they need, but it's all very prescriptive. They have a whole process around identifying the needs of the student and figuring out what technology would be the best to assist that student in meeting their goals. And that's individualized. So as far as how diverse it is, it's very diverse because it's individualized. Of course, there are certain types of assistive technology that are pretty common for a large portion of students that will need that type, but there are also going to be very niche ones that are related to low incident type of diagnosis that requires something a little bit different than what we've budgeted for. So we work together, and the assistive technology department plans their budget around student caseload and what types of devices are currently being used for the students that they have. And then each year, students get assessed more than that. They need different devices, or new students come in and we assess what kind of device they would need to use for that.
And then your leasing program, does that really involve not having to worry about where do we go with the old stuff and the newer stuff?
Well, we
graded?
do a lease to own. So when it comes time for that 4-year cycle, we enter in a new lease. The old devices become, or we pay $1, and those devices become ours. And then we assess what we can do with them. Some of them might be loaners in case things are out for a repair. Some of them might still have some livelihood that can use in a specific area. But a lot of them, they've kind of outlived their usefulness, and we go through a process of getting rid of those. Yeah.
I was just gonna say, when you ask for key indicators to look at, I
Sure.
would just encourage you to think about what is some of the panorama data telling us, or some of the partnership agreements telling us, where the partners districts may have experiences or interests with our technology, and we can, as we're working to like tighten those relationships, or maybe there's a place there to
Yeah, I think that's a
look
great
into.
idea.
Thank you too for this.
I had a couple, on the cloud sharing. I find that fascinating. Now, with the cloud sharing, will that allow us to share our information easier and the partner districts easier because it's all being?
That's the
Placed
goal.
in- I mean,
That's
what it-
that's the goal.
is
What
it-
I'm trying.
What I'm trying to figure out,
Yeah.
once it gets into the cloud, is it transformational then? Can all the, can all
So
the different
we can
districts
get a
use it?
consistent mechanism for everyone to access that data the same
Uh-huh.
way. We right now we're sharing data, but it's very individualized. We build an interface with Melville. We build an interface with Rockwood, for example. And then when changes happen or different data, we have to redo that. The idea that I like to have is, identifying those key data elements, making them available, and then giving everyone a consistent interface for this is how you get that data, and you can use that. But we're also going to use it in data visualizations that we have. And then I like to turn that corner and go the other way and say, now we have information, or your districts have information about the students that we're servicing, and we need some of that to be brought into our system so that we can analyze it for our purpose and do a two-way data sharing for that. And this will make it easier for them to do that as well, and also give them access to anything that we're analyzing. You can have access to it. You can see it. It's all in the cloud.
What is the insurance on our computers when our students all have the computers?
Mhm.
Well, I was wondering, what is the breakage and what is, do we have an insurance package on these?
So we are not currently carrying insurance on devices. So we typically, when we purchase devices that are going to be student facing, we add accidental damage protection in the warranty. And so up to a certain period of time, if it's damaged or broken due to accidental damage, we can get that replaced through a warranty repair. And then outside of that, we just kind of keep a stock. And if something happens or breaks, we keep a certain percentage where we can replace that device so the student still has the device. We haven't gone down the road of insurance, and a lot of other school districts do the insurance on the devices, but we haven't broached that because we, again, so many different kinds of devices, so many different kinds of costs. It's kind of hard to wrap our hands around.
Last question I had was, why in March was there such an influx of attacks?
That's when
It was
when we rolled
great.
out a lot of our multi-factor authentication to a lot of applications. So we had it, and then we expanded it to other applications in March, April of last year. So it just went.
Because I mean, it was clearly it was significant,
Yeah.
but it just shot way up.
Right. And then after that,
Back
those stemmed
down.
off because everything was normalized. And so
Okay.
those attacks weren't working anymore. They weren't trying them anymore.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate the presentation. Congratulations on your 99% customer satisfaction.
Thank you.
It really is very good. A couple of things. So just a question that I have at first. So you're talking about putting all of our data in the cloud, and we're talking about threats to information. Is there data that's so sensitive that we keep it in-house? Or is that no longer
So-
practical? Is that something
So
that?
currently we do have quite a bit of data that isn't shared in the cloud. Like all of our IEP data currently is is housed in our data center. However, as more applications move to cloud only, we have to really evaluate the security controls that are built into those cloud-based applications. And one of the things I do is I get a data privacy agreement with any vendor that we're going to have any student type data stored in a repository that we don't control. And that includes some guarantees about security and then remediation in the case of a breach. So, but that is a concern. But more and more companies are investing in the security of that data and locking on the data, including the ability to encrypt all the data so that we as the customer are the only ones that can access data. If it is breached, that data is encrypted, and without our decryption key, it can't be utilized.
It's helpful to understand. Thank
Yeah.
you. And then you talked about measurements that you could consider. If we can look at slide 4 again. Director Staten Vice President Staten talked about the panorama, which I think is great. And then if I look at your slide 4, your type priorities, if maybe you want to think about maybe having a dashboard to measure where you are in fiscal stewardship, cybersecurity and data privacy, equitable access to adequate technology and data sharing. I would like to see the progress on those goals. That was on slide 4. Sorry, did I go too fast?
Okay. Oops.
No.
I'm going the wrong way.
No.
Sorry, I went the wrong way.
There it is. That was it.
There you go.
Right
There
there.
we go. Yeah.
Yeah. So if those are your priorities, I'd be curious just to see how you're progressing
Sure.
on those goals as we
Absolutely.
future updates.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks.
I had a follow-up question related to Director Suda's comments. And I think we maybe talked about this in some past meetings as well, but are we being mindful about what information we're collecting from students and parents that might leave them open to any kind of attacks in terms of their data? Social security numbers, for example.
Yeah, correct. So we only collect data that we absolutely need. Now, in some cases, we do have to collect social security data in the case of Medicaid billing and things like that. But we try to protect that data as much as possible. A lot of data for state reporting also might have key pieces of information that are very vulnerable and risk of exposure is pretty high. So again, we try to secure those as best as possible, only collect that information. And I try to keep people from having multiple copies of that. If it's in a system of record, that's the only place that should exist. We do have some measures in place. For example, in Google, we have some monitoring controls that if Social Security shows up on a Google sheet somewhere, we get notified that there's Social Security data, there's private information data being placed in Google or shared with more than one person, then we'll get alerts for those things. So.
Doug, I know there was a slides really spoke to just the threat exposure management. If you can just speak to the bit security rating and what that was and what that means.
So yeah, one of the things that I do is we employ a variety of different security monitoring tools to tell us how we're doing. And one of those is a company called BitSight. BitSight monitors our public facing security or electronic assets, and then scans those for vulnerabilities, scan those for weaknesses, and looks for any evidence that those have been compromised or breached. And so we monitor that, and we use that to inform the type of security controls that we have. If they list a deficiency, we take care of that deficiency. Now, one of the things that they do, and one of the reasons why I chose them, is they report this information to all of the major cyber security insurance providers, and those cyber security insurance providers use a rating that they've come up with when they assess what the premiums are going to be for certain organizations. And this rating is kind of like a credit score. So it goes from about 330 to about 820 on the scale. And so we've been working multiple years. My infrastructure team, Tony Spina is our director of network infrastructure. And he's been working on lots of initiative to directly address any findings that they have. So I'm happy to announce that out of a possible 820, our current security rating is 7 780. We have hit 790 over the past year, and we're working to try to get that rating back up again as new vulnerabilities are signed. The industry standard is about 720. So we're a good 60, 70 points above education industry as a standard, across the country. They rate all of those, and that's the mean average of their security ratings. So, and we also use that tool to rate vendors that we're working with, and they all get a security rating. And I look at those vendors, and before we go into a contract with any vendor, I put them in their system, have them monitor them, and have them give me a report on over the past year how their security rating has gone, if there's any key findings.
I have another question. On Saturday, the St. Louis Area School Board Professional Learning Community had a safety and security panel. And one of the things that the panel talked about, an incredible panel, we had the police chief of St. Louis County and FBI agents and district security people, someone from MSBA. They talked about how they were monitoring social media for threats posed by anybody. Are you able to talk to us on a public level about how our district approaches that?
So yeah, it's one of the goals I have over the next 5 years is to try to get a more automated way of monitoring social media platforms. But yeah, we do try to monitor that. Our communications department does a good job monitoring anything that comes through, and trying to find that information as quickly as possible if there's any type of threat, or especially if it's a student, reporting self-harm or something like that. We try to identify those as quickly as possible from any of the platforms we can. But it is a kind of a moving target. There's multiple social media platforms that seem to pop up all the time. Some of these accounts are private. We can't necessarily see them. So, but that's one of the things I'm looking for, is something that does a better job at monitoring and alerting any type of social media activity that may be a threat or problematic.
And I didn't know this, maybe you already do, but the FBI and the St. Louis County Police Department are willing to partner in that kind of effort. They have some resources.
Yes.
I think, yeah,
Yeah,
thanks.
thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you for
Thank you.
excellent presentation.
Thank you.
Next on our list is the transportation 5-year plan. Ken?
All right. Good evening, Board of Directors, President Cuneo, Vice President Staten, and Dr. Macklin. My name is Kevin Andert. I'm the Chief of Technical Education District Operations. I have the privilege of presenting this evening with Kenny Mulder, who's our Director of Transportation. And Kenny's first going to walk you through our 5-year plan update for the transportation area.
All right, thank you. Good evening. Transportation overview. Transportation services are available to all students attending SSD managed schools and programs, including separate public schools, career technical education schools, and vocational training programs. Transportation also oversees our 2 in-house locations, our South and Central Garage, and our contracted location at the North facility. We also oversee transportation partnerships with Parkway, Melville, Kirkwood school districts, as well as 3 alternative transportation companies. Our snapshot is about the same as what it's been the last couple of years, although you'll see our driver and monitor positions, although we still have some openings. We've decreased that quite a bit, which we'll talk about here in the next couple slides. So here's our route snapshot. So at South Garage, we run 50 routes. Central Garage, we run 49 routes. North Garage is 102 routes. Parkway runs 22 routes for us. Melville is 14 routes. Kirkwood 6 routes. And then in alternative transportation services, we have 54 routes. Snapshot of our vehicles. Our Type A are our vans. We have 13 lift and 71 straight buses. Type C, we have 95 lift buses and 18 Type C. And then we have 8 service vehicles, or what we call our white fleet. Our fleet average is come up a little bit, just as we've struggled a little bit the last couple of years of getting replacements. And we'll again talk about that here in a little bit. Accomplished goals, finish the routing software upgrade from TransFinder Pro to Plus. We rolled out our Wayfinder ridership, turn-by-turn navigation. So our goal is to try to eliminate paper routes so drivers can focus more on the road and the students instead of the route sheets. So we're getting there, and hopefully by the next year we'll be there. We linked the parent app with our routing software and ridership. So now the parents be able to determine, they'll set their geo marks on where they want to know when the bus is arriving and when the bus has picked up their student and when the bus is dropped off at school. We're pretty excited about that. We haven't had a lot of parents enroll yet, so we just kind of keep putting those reminders out there that it's available. So hopefully we'll get more parents involved with that. Successfully moved to our new central transportation facility. We love it. Thank you, guys. This past year, we worked with the HR, DEIA, and the communications department to host a job fair or hiring event. We were able to hire 12 drivers and 21 monitors. So it was a good event. Past year, 23-24, the goal was to obtain a fully staffed workforce. Still in progress. We've hired 12 drivers and 21 monitors since the start of this school year. We completed our construction of our facility, as I said. Review of contracted services. We did extend our North Garage through Student Transportation of America for a year and then one extension year. We moved into the new transportation facility. We attempted to purchase 25 buses, only able to order 10 buses due to the continued chassis shortages. And 24-25, upgrade our outdated maintenance equipment. That's kind of a work in progress. We're kind of monitoring what we did. We did a lot of new purchases when we did the building purchase. Set individual transportation budgets for SSD schools and partner schools. We're currently reviewing what that might look like, and then hopefully we'll roll it out for next year's budget. Review contracts for partnership agreements for efficiencies and economically. Kevin will talk a little bit about that here shortly. We're proposing taking Parkway Transportation back in-house for next school year. The goal this year was again to purchase the 35 buses because we missed out on the order last year. We have placed our order for 19 Type C. Unfortunately, delivery date isn't until summer of 2026. So we might receive a partial order in 25-26, and some of that might even go into 26-27. We have not received our bids back for the Type A's. Hopefully they will come in next year, or again, we'll have to push those out to the following year. Year 4, 25-26, review current training modules for compliance, update, revise, or modify if we need to, and then again, purchase 25 buses, whatever our average does. We average do, yeah. Anyway, next, so we'll need to, sorry, I got tongue tied there. So we'll have to add additional funding to those years of wherever our order that we placed this year falls in. So that'll reflect on my budget submission. Year 5, 26-27, review transportation software for upgrades. We just did that this year, so I'm hoping we won't have to do that again. Maybe our maintenance software, we might have to upgrade. That is an older program that they do. The TransFinder program we use for everything else does have a maintenance program, so we might look at doing something like that. And again, purchasing our typical order of 25 buses if possible. All right, Kevin.
Yep. All right. And so as Kenny mentioned, one of the things that we're looking at is contracted services. To give you a little bit of context, if you time travel back to the early 2000s, Special School District entered into a number of partnership agreements with partner districts to provide the transportation for our students with disabilities. At one point in time, we had contracted agreements with Rockwood, Rittner, University City, Ladue. Over time, we brought all of those back in-house as a part of SSD transportation. Currently, as Kenny mentioned, we have 3 contracted agreements that still exist. Parkway, Melville, and Kirkwood are the 3 contracted agreements. The Parkway agreement is one that is up this year, which is why we're looking at it. It was part of a contract. We'll talk about that contract structure here in a minute. But the reason we're having the conversation now is because it is a contract that's scheduled to expire at the end of the current school year. In full transparency, we did have a meeting with Parkway in the month of November ahead of this presentation because we want to work collaboratively with Parkway. We're really navigating this hand in hand with the partner districts. So we met with Parkway Superintendent, Chief Financial Officer, Director of Transportation to talk about that this has nothing to do with the level of service that Parkway is providing, but instead we're looking at, as a district, how can we be the best stewards of taxpayer dollars, provide those students with the services that they deserve, and at the same time, meet all the organizational needs that we have within SSD. And so that's why we're taking a look at this contract now, but Parkway is very much in the loop that we're taking a look at this agreement and we're working through this process with them. So some history about the agreement in general. So the original 10-year agreement was signed back in May of 2005, and then it was renewed back in 2015. The current contract is set to expire this June. One unique thing about this agreement as opposed to some of our other contracted services. So like as Kenny mentioned, we have contracted services in the North region with Student Transportation of America. In that case, Student Transportation of America owns those buses. In the Parkway agreement, we actually own the buses that Parkway is using to run the routes. So all of those buses are actually SSD buses, which makes it a little bit different when you talk about bringing this in-house. You just heard Kenny talk about how hard it is to get school buses. One reason we can talk about bringing this in-house is those are already buses that are owned by our district, so it takes that logistical challenge off the table. So SSD owns the buses. There's 31 total, 21 route buses, and then some spare buses. You can see the breakdown of the agreement cost over the 10-year structure. And so you can see it kind of is going up, and then it went down during the COVID years just because routes weren't running, but everyone kind of saw that savings, especially during the 1920 school year and the 2021 school year. And then it's normalized out that year over year, we're in that $2.1 to $2.4 million range for the cost for this agreement, where Parkway is billing SSD back for the cost of transporting those students, including the salaries of the drivers, as well as some salaries of some other staff. So benefits of bringing this agreement in-house. So one is reducing duplicated salaries. So there's a savings of potentially $350,000 there. And they have a manager, a router, a dispatcher, and those are all people that we already have at our central bus garage. And so SSD staff have the capacity to absorb these additional routes. As Kenny talked about, you saw that North Garage has over 100 routes that they're running daily. And we're not at that same volume at our central and our south bus garages. So we have that human capacity to take that on, as well as an additional technician. So those are salaries that we could potentially save. This also helps us as that core value of equity for student transportation, that we know across the district if a student is being transported by SSD, everyone has that same level of training, the same guidance, they're covered by the same policies. If there's an accident, we know what training that driver received before they stepped foot on the road. Where now with the contracted agreement, Parkway has control over that training and that guidance. And we know, you've heard Kenny be recognized here a number of times. He is really the expert in the transportation of students with disabilities. And so the training that we do here at SSD on the transportation space is some of the best training in the country. And that's one of the things that we like to celebrate. And we want more students to have drivers with that level of training. Also allows us to increase efficiency in routes. As you know, all of the districts that we serve border other districts. There's an opportunity where there might be some crossover routes that we can combine with districts that border with Parkway to create some efficiency. That could lead to a reduced total number of routes that we're running on a day-to-day basis. Also potential to reduce some staffing that we need for those once you have that reduction in routes. You also have potential to reduce the number of buses that are required because Parkway has standby buses and then we have standby buses at Central Bus Garage. Instead, we could keep that same pool of standby buses and not to have as many buses that are sitting out of service. So we could decrease total number of buses. Also written into the contract, there's Parkway has not exercised it recently, but there is a clause that allows $45,000 for building maintenance and upgrades that Parkway could bill us for. So that's another piece of this puzzle that by moving out of the contract, then that's not something that could happen. I'm going to pass it off to Kenny to talk a little about some other logistics that we would need to navigate if we look at bringing this in-house.
Thanks, Kevin. So some of the logistics are add Parkway routes, buses back to Central Garage. So what we'll start doing is incorporating those routes into ours. And we're gonna start doing that this year to see what that might look like, see how many reduction. You know, we at max, we're gonna have 21, but my goal is to reduce that additional 5 or 6 routes by incorporating partner districts with those routes. Hire enough drivers and aides. We'll kind of, in our conversation with Parkway, that was one of their concerns was, are we gonna be able to provide jobs for their staffing? And yes, we will be able to accommodate that. And then adding one technician, we're going to add an additional 31 buses. So we're looking at adding a technician, but again, we won't add routers or dispatchers or anything like that. We already have those folks on staff. And then again, the biggest piece is communicating with the district and then parents on what our intentions are and what that will look like. Oh, sorry about that. On to my MSIP program monitoring report. Our mission statement is collaborating to provide safe, equitable, compassionate transportation services for all students across their educational settings. Some of our KPIs are number of elementary students on routes for over 60 minutes. Our goal is 3% or less. We were at that goal this year. We were down a couple percent from last year. The 22-23 school year, we were at 3%. On-time bus arrivals, we're at 98%, so we're actually down 1% from last. We're at 99% last year. Percentage of student attendance days, the number of routes exceeds the number of available drivers by one or more. That excludes our midday routes. We're at 25%. So we're up, our goal is 25%. We were up 41%. We'll see those numbers decrease though, as we are becoming closer to being fully staffed. So what that number means is basically not meaning that we didn't run a route that day for the student. It was meant that we drivers had to double up routes, which, hurts our efficiencies on-time performance. Or we had, staff members, we pulled staff members, the maintenance guys had to drive, our safety and training had to drive. And the same with our monitor, percentage of student attendance days and the number of routes requiring an aid exceeded the number of available aids by one or more. We were again at 67%, so that was a pretty high number, but we hired 21 monitors this year. So we've seen that number decreased. So we're able to provide all those services like we need to be providing. I talked really fast, but you guys
You
have
did good.
questions?
Questions?
I've got a question.
Okay.
In slide 7, you mentioned the hiring of drivers and monitors.
Mhm.
Can we deduce that there's no vacancies remain, or are there?
No, there are vacancies. In the first part of my report, I think we have 7 drivers and 12 monitors still open. So we'll look to fill those. We're kind of slowing down now to kind of see where we're landing. And if we can reduce those positions, we'll reduce those positions. So we're kind of on a hold now until we determine what we're going to do with Parkway. So we're hiring 1 and 2 here and there, but we're not having hiring events at this time to try to fill those slots.
What do you see as the barriers keeping us from hiring all that we need at this point?
Just availability. Yeah, I think anybody who wants to drive a bus is driving a bus. Anybody, and the monitors for a while was a lot of our monitors were becoming paras because the pay was a little bit more. And so I think we're kind of leveling out. As the para positions get filled, the monitor positions will start filling up as well.
Give us any concern then as we take on the Parkway route?
No, we're doing good. And again, we'll maintain a lot of those folks. Parkway may need drivers for their general education side of transportation, but they won't have a lot of positions for monitors. So I think we'll be able to fill the majority of our monitor positions with that. And as soon as we can get this word out, I would like to start, a hiring fair with just the Parkway folks so we can guarantee, them a position when they come on board.
Any other questions?
I have a question, if it's just again are the Parkway bus routes we are thinking of taking over currently fully staffed?
They are currently fully staffed, yes. As of this year. Last year, that was not the case. Again, staff was out driving every year. I think with the St. Louis Public drivers leaving St. Louis Public, a lot of the positions at most of your partner schools were filled, so.
Are we thinking we're gonna be able to absorb some of those drivers and aides, or are we thinking the Parkway is gonna want to shift those over to their own needs?
I think they may need a few, but we'll utilize the majority of them, hopefully.
Thank you.
Joanne?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah. So it sounds like you're really creatively filling those shortages. Are you able to run every route every day?
We run every route every day.
Thank you for doing
Yeah,
that.
and it's not as much of a struggle. I'm able to spend more time in my office, and our safety and training team have been able to train more drivers and monitors, do check rides, road observations. So they're out on the streets, making observations more to try to keep, instances and accidents down. And we can focus more on maintaining buses and keeping all staff where they belong.
Thank you. Great.
Mhm.
Couple other questions. The Parkway buses, you mentioned that our average fleet age is 6 years.
That includes
Does
the Parkway. Mhm.
Okay, so those buses are not necessarily all older or younger. They're
Correct.
kind of
The
all-
original contract language said 5% or a 5-year average. But again, they understand with our change that we just can't accommodate that. So, but we do keep their rotation cycle. When we order new buses, we order new buses for them as well.
Okay, so that won't affect the average age of the fleet.
No.
Okay. And then there is state reimbursement for transportation. Will that I don't know where that's going now.
We already claim those students,
Okay.
so the reimbursement should not change.
Okay.
Mhm.
Couple of other things. Physically, I guess we have space to park all the.
Our new facility, this will be run out of our new central garage facility. And we have plenty of space for additional cars and buses.
I knew you'd have an answer. I just had the question. Thanks. And then I guess this will require board approval, once we're a little bit farther down the line.
Yes.
If we choose to go in this direction.
Mhm.
Okay. And do you know when Melville and Kirkwood are up?
Are you on top?
Sure, Melville is coming up in the next couple of years. With Melville, I would love to be able to do the same with Melville. I just don't have the spacing at South. So we have considered doing some building changes down in the South area. We're not quite there yet. We're still looking. And we can consider that when we get to that point.
Okay, great. Thanks for the presentation.
Just a couple, one of which I've seen what other districts have had difficulties hiring bus drivers. I am amazed that that we only have this much of a shortage.
Yeah.
Compared if, doesn't take that long to remember back when St. Louis City had difficulties with all transportation
Mhm.
and nobody could find bus drivers. I laud you for getting them. The only question I had on the Parkway, I think it's a great idea to take it back. But I just want to make sure, what have the families been told at Parkway yet?
At this point, nothing. We've only had meetings with the Parkway folks and you guys. So
Can we, what changes do you see that they may have?
the only
Just simply
change
then,
will
you
be
know-
the training we provide for our drivers will be consistent across the board. The major change they'll see is the name on the side of the bus. It'll be our district number and not Parkway.
Okay, can we make sure, beside, I don't want Parkway families getting worried that, somehow they're being left out or being less than.
Sure.
Fantastic. I think this is a great deal. We should have been taking this back 5 years ago.
Sure.
So when we met with myself, Kenny, and Kevin, when we met with Parkway, there were really just a couple of pieces that we wanted to look to finalize from our meeting in October. They were very, very grateful to be having the meeting in October and not to be having the meeting in the spring. And so we are scheduled for a follow-up meeting in January, knowing that ultimate board approval will be next steps. And so, again, we wanted to just proactively to be able to look at really all of our contracts and what they look like and being able to delve into the fabric of the organization and what those pieces really mean. And so I'm thankful to Kenny and Kevin for delving into these pieces.
One of the things we've got to mention is part of the reason we're able to look at this now is that Kenny's been able to get the staffing levels to the way that they are. As he talked about the TransFinder software, that upgrade has been a huge upgrade. The fact that families can see where a bus is at in real time, so you're not wondering, when is it going to get to my stop? That if a family knows the bus is 60 seconds away, just bear with us and it'll be there. They're stuck at a stoplight or they had to take a detour. Those pieces along the way have allowed us to provide much better customer service. So because we're able to be as closely to full staff as we are, because of the new central bus garage, and because the training that Kenny's been providing his staff, and then the upgrading of the technology, it's kind of a perfect alignment where all things hit at the same time that this contract is up. And so that's really the piece that's made this possible, is that we're staffed in the place that we are and have the resources necessary to support additional routes. Thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. I am very pleased to say that Bill Gamble has arrived. And I am sure Bill Gamble is pleased that he arrived. The
Yes.
stage is yours.
Yeah, good evening, President Cuneo, Vice President Staten, Board of Directors, Dr. Macklin, and community. I have the great pleasure of introducing the man that has been up and down Highway 770 today. Bill Gamble. He is from Gamble and Schleiermeyer, and he is going to provide a legislative update for what's to come this year.
Thank you. Glad to be here. It's my second trip to St. Louis today, so it's that time of year. And then we'll get into this. Just left a meeting with the governor's transition team on current technical education. So it's been a busy day, but a good day. No, Wendy? That's all right. We'll go without this. Okay. Got it? Okay, key issues that we're going to watch this year. Every gubernatorial candidate, Republican gubernatorial candidate, campaigned on elimination of the income tax. We've seen several bills.
There we go.
That's our first slide.
That's his first slide.
Okay,
Yep, that's it. Sorry.
thank you. This is why they don't even let me touch the copy machine. I love technology, I love everything, but they don't even let me touch the copy machine in the office. So key issues that we're going to watch this year. As I said, every gubernatorial candidate, Republican gubernatorial candidate, campaigned on elimination of the income tax. We've seen several bills pre-filing began December 1st. We've seen several bills out there, constitutional amendments to change and eliminate and phase out our income tax. The one I find the most interesting and the one I think that's going to get the most attention is one that takes us, we're going to be at 4.7% personal income tax this year percentage. This would lower it down to a flat 4% income tax and take away the federal deductibility. Now, I know that lowering it down from 4.7 to 4 is about $1.5 billion in a hit to general revenue, which is for Missouri. That's when we're only looking at about 8.5 in personal income tax. That's a big hit. How the loss of the federal deductibility comes in, we haven't seen that. A lot of us are looking at the calculation. But I'm going to say that income tax will be one of the top issues this year, the elimination of, and how you do the replacement. And that's the kicker. What are you going to replace it with? Are you going to eliminate all the sales tax exemptions? What does eliminating the federal deductibility? All of those things, we don't have a question. We don't have an answer to those questions yet. I don't think they do. But when the House, the first constitutional amendment is HJR 1, and then they hold off the filing and they give them the special number of House Bill 100, we know it's going to be a priority. So that's the first thing we're going to be focused on. Personal property tax, that has always been a challenge. That's one of the issues that we've been faced with the last 4 years. Elimination of personal property tax is a huge hit on public education. Not only that, but the counties, we have so many people that are affected by this. We have a coalition working against this. We will continue to work against it. And then looking at the senior property tax freeze, we've seen bills in to kind of take it even further to try to address that. All of these, I think, I can't tell you where we're going to be or where we're going to end up, but these are the issues that we're going to be focused on and watching, and several of us too. It's interesting that in other states, when you look at income tax elimination of sales tax, it brings in political subdivisions such as SSD and the corporate community together, because they both take a hit. So it's an interesting partnership that could develop as we move forward. The next one, educational funding, school choice. Several bills. The incoming governor, Governor Keogh, has talked about the Arizona model of school choice. The money follows the student. Now in Arizona, they thought it would be about 50 million. It was 700 and some odd $1 million hit. So that's Arizona. How this could affect, we haven't seen the fiscal note on the bill yet, but that is a big issue. And of course, what we're worried about is that there really isn't any choice when it comes to the students that you serve. I mean, they don't have a choice for somebody that needs special education or career and technical education. Those entities, whether it's parochial or private, they don't serve those students. So what are we going to do if we have that? How do we protect the educational priorities of funding those students? And I think that's going to be something that we've already mentioned. I mentioned today in the governor's office. That is concerning. The governor is number one priority. He did stick his head in, the incoming governor, Governor Keogh, Governor-elect Keogh. Career and technical education is his number one top priority.
Campaigns.
We met with a group of about 8 of us that all sectors of career and technical education met with the governor's staff. The biggest problem is that you're only serving about half of your students in career and technical education. You don't have enough slots. Everybody's all they can do is about 50% of the potential capacity, or the people students that wanted to have this educational opportunity. And the funding hasn't kept up with the technology and the equipment and the supplies. There is a provision in the statute already dealing with enhancement grants. So our pitch today was, and I just left there and drove here, was to fund the enhancement grants, and let's catch up, because we haven't funded the enhancement grants that funds those equipment opportunities in probably 10 years. So that was our pitch. It was well received. The only thing that we're really concerned about is the availability of money. When we get into money, and I'm kind of going to go off script here, so sorry, but revenue picture does not look good. Right now, today, we're about 50 million behind where we were last year. Coming in next year, the Social Security income tax elimination kicks in, and then another 0.1% reduction in income tax. So we have those challenges ahead of us, and Missouri is required to do a balanced budget. So you ask, how do you do income tax elimination with these budget challenges? That's a good question. I don't know how you do that. The other funding challenge we're going to have is last year, Senate Bill 727, it had some great opportunities for us because it changes the school foundation formula to full-time students, full-time population, away from average attendance. That helps us. But there wasn't a dedicated stream of funding in the bill for transportation, which is a big issue to us and to rural districts. So that's going to be our number one focus, is let's make sure we fund transportation. And we got a good coalition, because that's really where the rural folks and the urban folks come together. Today in our meeting with the governor's office, we had a good coalition of agriculture, healthcare, trade and technical industrial folks making our pitch and showing that the need, and that was a good representation, and I felt that's pretty good. So we have a good partnership with everybody on these issues, and it's again, we've got a good urban rural coalition. The one thing that's going to be another big issue this session, Amendment 3, the issue that nearly passed on reproductive rights, abortion. There's going to be a big push to basically undo what was done. And that's just basically where the votes came. It passed in the urban areas, but of course the General Assembly is controlled by the rural counties, and that's where it was overwhelmingly opposed. How that is going to impact the process, how that is going to impact any implications when it comes to school funding, how is that going to affect, even though it doesn't seem like it, it's going to affect every issue that's out there for this next session. Whether they move it or not quickly, that'll be the question. If they move it, they have to close off debate. That could really blow up the place. So I think that although you may read about it, you may hear about it, you may think, oh, well, it's going to affect the whole process.
Because it's going to, sorry to interrupt here, because it's going to slow down discussion of other bills. And
we call it when you evoke cloture in our Missouri General Assembly, because it's like Mr. Smith goes to Washington. You know, we had the filibuster, the pure filibuster. When you shut that off, we call it the nuclear option. It just blows everything up. I know I went off script, didn't I? So that's I always color outside the lines. I'm sorry, but
do you think that much will be done this session because of that? I see this dominating everything. Right to the point where nothing's going to get done until this is addressed.
The leadership of the Senate is working hard to, the problem last year was between the Republican Party, between the two factions of the Republican Party. I like to say that the Missouri General Assembly, it's not a two-party system, it's a parliament. It's a parliamentary. You have three groups. You have the conservative Republicans, you have the Freedom Caucus, then you have the Democrats. Yeah. Now, they've been working hard to try to get that coalition of Republicans together. If they come together, on Amendment 3, move the previous question, in debate, blow it up. Then the Democrats start to come in and filibuster and slow down the process. It's tough when you've got three different groups when you're trying to move, and especially in our Missouri State Senate. It's very unique to any other state. When we try to describe it to some of our colleagues, they just, when you got the pure filibuster, all it takes is about 4 people and you can just stop everything. I'll open it up to questions. Anything I missed? I will say one other thing. We have Friday calls every Friday at 9. Your group's amazing. They provide information. We're going to come down, they're going to come down again, and we're going to walk the halls, and we're going to interact with key decision makers. We have 55 new members of the Missouri General Assembly. We have term limits, big change this year. So they're going to come down and we'll start interacting with those key members. But I can't tell you how valuable it is to have our Friday calls every 9 o'clock Friday morning and discuss things. And so many of our issues, and especially when it comes to our statutes, are so different. And when you change things like the foundation formula, you have to make certain special changes for the special school district. And the information they provide me is just, I can't say enough. how much I appreciate it. So kudos to them.
You had mentioned, if I could ask, the social security elimination. What's that all about? I guess the concern I have is a large portion of our residents are senior citizens.
Yeah, well,
And so I'm kind of, when you said social security elimination, it just kind of.
elimination of the tax, of the income tax on Social Security. I'm
Right.
sorry.
So
So that was part of that. If you'll remember 2 years ago, in the in the last second, they did that plus the senior property tax freeze.
Right.
And that was one where the governor's office had gone into the speaker's office and thought they had an agreement, and then they came out with this pretty major senior citizen property tax freeze, plus the elimination of the income tax on Social Security. And that didn't kick in last year. It kicks in this year.
Okay.
It was one of those,
And that will affect us as far as funding too.
it will affect you as far as general revenue funding is concerned. Yeah, as far as the whole general revenue picture. And that's why I'm trying to figure out
To what degree it's.
how do you do this?
Yeah.
You know, how do you eliminate the or cut 1.5 billion, and how do you do the replacement and you know, elimination of all the sales tax exemptions? Do you do that? There's a constitutional amendment right now, services, you know, lawyers' fees, doctors' fees, dentists, any professional fees, you don't charge sales tax. Well, this takes out that exemption in the Constitution. Now that'll be an interesting debate. Yeah, but I mean, how you do all this, and it's going to be interesting.
Can I ask another question?
Sure.
Since we deal with a lot of teachers,
Uh-huh.
and this is more of a federal level of doing away with the windfall for social security for retirement for teachers.
Uh-huh.
In other words, the whole aspect that teachers, when they retire, don't get their full social security.
Right.
Because they have they're looking at eliminating that.
Right.
full clause. Where does that stand? Are you aware of anything that's happened? And I guess my concerns for our teaching staff, boy, that would be huge to say, hey, you get the money you put into social security, because so many teachers work 2 or 3 jobs. And yet they're kind of under the gun of getting their social security. And I'm just kind of wondering if you're aware of any of that, or.
I tell you what, that is, I was on a call this week, and it was more discussion about the elimination of the Department of Education and how what happens and what do you do with all the scholarships and the programs.
Or IDA. IDA.
Yeah.
IEPs.
How do you do that? Yeah. And so the Social Security, I'll check that out though. I'll
Yeah,
ask some of our folks in Washington that we deal with, and
Just interested.
no, that's a good point.
Because I think our teachers would really be interested in that, and if they need to write their
Yeah.
representatives in Washington DC, it could make a huge difference for
Yeah.
the teachers out there that are affected by
Well,
that.
they're only looking at eliminating $2 trillion out of the budget. So,
Yeah.
that's nothing, you know.
One of the things that I've been reading in this is that if they get rid of the income tax, they are projecting that more companies, more businesses will move to here, and that in fact, it will cause a larger increase in monies taken in. Does any of this make sense, or is this just?
What we have seen in other states, like I said, there's been an interesting coalition and opposition, because let's look at down the line. What corporations are concerned about, you eliminate the income tax, or you eliminate the corporate income tax. Well, there's probably not going to be enough money to fund things.
Mm-hmm.
So where are they going to come back? And what are they going to put before the voters? It's probably going to be a corporate income tax, and it'll be a lot more than our 4.9% income tax. So the corporate community, and also we're very fortunate as far as the corporate income tax. We got the second lowest corporate income tax in the country. Only North Carolina is lower than we are. But also what they're concerned about is even if you eliminate the corporate income tax, and you eliminate the sales tax exemptions, business pays the most in sales tax. That's probably, we think, is a tax increase.
Okay.
So it's kind of, like I said, it's an interesting coalition that we've seen in other states. Now, I wouldn't say everybody is there yet, but everybody's talking.
Okay.
And you know, there's a lot of interest in, you know, we don't have it too bad. We got a low income tax. We got a low corporate income tax. But then again, you know, we are an overwhelmingly red state, and taxes are one of the biggest issues on people's mind. And I've just seen a lot of bills filed dealing with property, personal property, corporate, and personal income tax.
Would it just one more,
No, go ahead.
would it be possible? I find your information invaluable, especially when we start talking about our budgets. And I know that you're communicating on a regular basis with our SSD individuals here. Would it be possible that we could also, as a board, get maybe a monthly or bi-monthly
Sure,
update of what is happening?
sure.
Because this could truly affect our budget,
Yeah.
and especially if the money follows the child, that goes through, that could have a large impact, not on us particularly, but it would have a large impact on the other 22 districts, which means it will have a large impact on us.
That means a cut in the foundation formula, because as we see it, it's basically taking money from the foundation formula, and that's where the money comes from. Well, you know, that's going to affect you also indirectly, because you're having that money transferred over and taken out of the foundation formula, and you know, that's where your funding comes from, along with federal money, of course. But yeah, this is it gets pretty complicated as we get into this.
But I think you really have a great insight on what's happening in the state capitol. And, you know, it changes pretty rapidly. And I know they wait till the last minute sometimes to bring things up, to try to get things to pass quickly.
We never leave the place.
Right.
You know, we don't. I mean, it's you know, there's a few nights when you go home, and a few mornings when you go home and you know, take a shower and change shirts and go back. So and I could envision some of that happening this year, especially on Amendment 3, if they try to make some changes on that.
Yeah, and I think the more transparent we can be with our parents
Yes,
and so forth.
it'd be nice to have them start writing people too.
I think that's really important.
Yeah.
We're really working on transparency and let people know this is where it's at. This is how it affects teachers. This is how it affects kids.
Mhm.
The more we can be transparent with all that, the better off, I think.
We had a meeting with the educational groups, primarily with the school boards. That's who I work in the lobbying group, and we had that a week ago, and we were talking about that. They're doing outreach.
Right.
And I'm pretty impressed with what they're doing as far as their outreach and their communication and trying to get people engaged. But it's going to be important. You know, people are going to have to, we're down to the serious business now. You know, 727, that bill was a problem. It's nothing compared to this that we're looking at right now, and how it can affect public education and our students, because I see our students are the ones that are left behind. Because we're going to be, it's going to be our responsibility, but we need the funding to maintain that responsibility.
You have a clear read yet in your circles on the threats, the signals regarding the Department of Education, national level, and I'm hearing mixed signals.
Yeah.
As well. And is there any response at the state?
Well, I think that the thought is that how are you going to divide up the duties, especially on the scholarships? Now, I haven't heard of anything about how are they going to handle the IEP situation? You know, how are you going to do that? I have not heard any discussion about that. There are those that are thinking that if he's going to do it, he's got to do it in the first year, and he may not be able to do it in the first year because it's way too complicated. Now, I also want to say that I've been on 3 different calls with 3 different client groups about what's happening. They are anticipating on his first day 280 to 300 executive orders.
Whoa.
Wow.
I mean, just a massive amount of executive orders. And I say that just wasn't from one call. That's been pretty consistent with all 3 calls that I've been on. So look out. You know, I don't think he can, as I understand it, I don't think he can abolish it through an executive order. It's going to take legislation. And let's face it, the House is going to be, the Republicans are just going to have a two vote majority very quickly because the 3, I think it's 20 to 15 now, and then 3 are
Really?
presidential
Yeah.
appointments. So
Yeah.
they're only going to have a 2 vote majority.
How quickly then does, there'll be are these elections are appointed by the governor? Yeah, for the replacements. I don't know in those states.
Yeah, I think they're looking at probably spring. I've heard that the one that's going to move the fastest is Florida, probably March or April. So it's probably not going to be until March or April to have those special elections.
But it'll be his daughter.
So I apologize for going off script,
No,
but
No,
great information.
once I get rolling, I can't help myself.
Joe, Director Suda.
Yeah.
Yeah, hi, thank you. Appreciate the presentation, appreciate your advocacy. I have a question for the board and for you. Does our board get together and establish legislative priorities? That's something that I know other boards do. I've not yet served a full cycle in this board. Is that something that we've ever done?
We have not, as far as I can remember.
So on my last board, which was U City, which is the practice done in other places too. In December, the board would get together and identify legislative priorities and would then write a letter about a 2-sided page, identifying our legislative priorities that we would then send out to all of the elected representatives and senators. And I know you're taking your direction from what our district needs. I think it would be, just good to work together to see if we can influence any legislation in that manner. So it's something I'd like us to think about.
Sure.
And what we will do, not only, we're not, when your key staff come down and we interact, but we do the same thing. I mean, we're going to have new education members, probably the chair of the education committee in the House stays the same. Senate's probably going to change. So what we do the first 2 weeks of session is we go around and visit with all the members, myself,
Great.
Our group.
Building
get a
those
head start, yeah.
relationships, Yeah.
I will say, I think that in a way, the issues have pretty much, I think I've outlined, just to give you my opinion, they've given us our issues that we're going to have to deal with for the next year.
And I think if we choose to do a letter, I think you'd be very instrumental in helping us identify those priorities.
Sure.
Yeah.
But I see, we got to make sure that when the money follows the student. If they do that, we've got to make sure that our students are taken care of. We need to make sure that we get as much funding for transportation as possible, because that's a huge cost and that's appropriations item. If they change the foundation formula, that's really where it gets tricky, because we're so different.
Yeah.
And we have to really scrutinize that and watch that, because we have various provisions that are exclusive to the special school district. So if they do that in conjunction with the money following the student, then we've got 2 things to watch.
Right, thank you.
Thank
Thank you
you.
very much.
Thank
Okay,
you.
thank you very much. We certainly have a passion for this. You have a passion for the special school district we have, and I'll just tell you, thanks for the work you do and for the work your staff does and the support I get. It's, I can't say enough.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks.
All righty, the board will now take up its action items. First on the list. Second, would someone like to vote to approve second reading of the board policy GBAA, staff extra duty assignments?
So moved.
Second.
Need a roll call? No, I don't. All in favor?
Hi.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Second reading, board policy GCBA, professional staff compensation. Someone make a motion to approve?
So moved. Second.
Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. 703, requesting position modification, 10-month tech support, the 12-month desktop support technician. Someone move to approve?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. On the Board of Education vacancy. On this, as we know, we have spoken of this. We have a board vacancy. We will not be filling this vacancy. We will be waiting until the governing council does so. And I believe, was it today was the first
Yes,
day
today was the
that,
first day, yes.
if anyone wants to open for packets, please do so. Someone wants to apply. If you know anyone interested, please have them apply. All right. The next, budget adjustment, business and finance.
We need to vote on
Yeah,
something.
Oh, I'm sorry. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Oh, four, to invoke SSD policy, which in part states no section of the policies, rules, and procedures may be construed to limit the statutory powers of the board to exercise its prudent judgment and not fill the current board vacancy. And we're doing this, as we said, the governing council will be electing an individual in the March, early part of April for this. And by the time we did all the interviews and all that, we would be conflicting with them.
You've got a motion in a second.
Any other discussion on this?
No, I just wanted to make sure we explained why, and you just did. Thank you.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Is there a motion to approve 7.06 budget adjustment?
So moved.
Is there a second to the motion?
Second.
Motion's moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? No, go on.
Yeah, I did send in a request just for a little clarification. Could we get a high level overview of this budget adjustment that we're recommending?
Sure.
Thank you.
Yes, I apologize. That was missed. I apologize. Budget adjustment provided is a result of an extensive review of operational and instructional positions across the district. After reviewing the data, we are eliminating historically vacant positions. In addition, we have reallocated duties from currently vacant positions. As a result, these positions are being proposed as being eliminated.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Yeah.
Any other discussion or any clarification that anyone needs? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Would someone like to make a motion for a closed meeting of the Board of Education on December 10th, 2024, following this meeting?
So moved.
Second.
Need a roll call on
And
this.
January 14th.
Yeah, and January.
And January
And
14th.
January 14th. Let's see the
Thank you.
January 14th on there.
Director Asner,
Yes.
Director Mueller,
Yes.
Director Sartorius.
Yes.
Director Studo,
Yes.
Vice President Staten,
Yes,
President Cuneo.
Yes. Board communications, anyone?
I just would like to say as we, running for a board might be scary or intimidating, and I just am happy to extend myself if anybody has questions about my experience in this year and a half. It has been an interesting one for sure. So I just wanted to put that out there publicly that if any of the open board seats are something you're interested in, then I'm happy to share my experience with anyone who wants to engage in conversation. And my email is on the website.
And I echo those sentiments.
Any other communications?
Yeah, I've got a couple of things. Several of us attended governing council on December 2nd. I think that the information provided was clear, and I think that helps the governing council in their role in terms of making decisions. Director Staten and I, Madam Vice President and I attended a legislative meeting with Dr. Macklin in Pattonville on Friday and got some updates on what to expect in the coming year. It was very informative. And I understand that Pattonville Parkway and SSD have been meeting together for quite some time to identify legislative priorities. There was one senator and there were 2 representatives there. So that was very nice. On Saturday, December 7th, the St. Louis Area School Board PLC met. I think I mentioned that already. We had an incredible summit on safety and school safety and security. And I'm looking forward to hearing our updates as we look at our facilities plan. And then some of you know that I'm working with a group of board members from the PLC to work on early childhood expansion in St. Louis County. Senator Tracy McCreary filed a bill for us on our behalf. It's Senate Bill 233 to allow permission to establish the district. We realize that there are funding challenges for schools right now, as we heard all of this. So we'd like to delay our ballot measure, but we'd like to establish legislative permission to form the district. So that's out there, Senate Bill 233. And we informed superintendents and board presidents of that, of our position today. So that's what I've got.
Can you explain a little bit more on what you're talking about from the district?
Yes, so the coalition has been working for several years to establish an early childhood school district in St. Louis County dedicated to fully funding 4-year-old education in conjunction with all of the existing school districts. Ideally, we would use a property tax to fully fund high quality pre-kindergarten education for every 4-year-old in St. Louis County. And it would be a game changer. The benefits, and I'm going to get on my soapbox for about 1 minute, but the benefits of high quality pre-kindergarten education are amazing. Students who have special needs who are identified earlier have better outcomes. Children are better prepared for kindergarten. They do better throughout their elementary school career. There's less need for remediation. They're more likely to graduate high school. They're less likely to be in prison. They're less likely to have teen pregnancies. Health outcomes, incomes are higher, all of that from 1 year of high quality pre-kindergarten education. So I'm a believer and I hope you are too. Thanks.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I do want to thank everyone for their presentations this evening and the hard work that went into those. We appreciate those pieces. And this will be our last meeting of this year. So I want to wish everyone happy holidays as we go into the new year.
Would someone like to make a motion to adjourn?
Come on.
Okay.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Let's take 4 or 5 minutes and then start our executive meeting. I would say this is really for the old people like me. Go to the restroom, but I